Hey everybody, it's Chris and Rick Talk Guitars. We're proud members of the Ruinous Media Network now. Yay. We're kind of psyched about that. Hopefully 2024 will be kind of cool for Chris and I and our podcast, and we're really looking forward to it. So we were on the phone and we were talking about things, and we came up with kind of a cool concept. We think it's cool anyway, where I pick 3 songs and 3 guitar players, and Chris picks 3 guitarists and songs, and we swap them and we kind of talk about them. And we're going to call it 3 for 3. Because it's kind of
battle
snappy.
to the death.
Battle to the death. And I'm going to start with the songs Chris gave me.
We're gonna start with the ones that you picked.
Cool. Cool. So we're gonna start with the ones I picked. I love it. And so, what were those songs, Chris?
I'm right here.
Okay. Well, why don't you name them?
All right. You want to start with the top of your list down to the bottom of your list?
Yeah. Okay.
The first song that you picked was by Heart, and the song was Magazine from 1977 from the record of the same name. Heart Magazine 1977. You can find it on Spotify if you want to follow along.
Nice. So why don't you start? Because I kind of, when I sent you those songs, I kind of gave you some notes, but
to be perfectly honest, since this is the first time we did this and I'm still trying to figure out what will happen with this. I'm kind of excited to see what happens. I didn't read your notes.
Oh, okay, cool.
I just read the songs.
Well,
and I told you not to read my notes too, because I just want to see what your thoughts are just without hearing my thoughts. So my thoughts on that one, first off, I'm familiar with that record in that my sister was a huge Heart fan and had those records on all the time. And I remember when this one came out, I mean, it had that, it had that Can't Live song on there.
Yeah.
And so I heard it a lot, and I heard this song a lot, and listening to it after all these years, because I don't think I've heard it since then. So it's been a long time, that particular song.
Wow.
So I love the way that it sounds. I mean, it's kind of a lush mix. The acoustic instruments sound really, really cool, but it's also extremely of its time. And that's another thing that I thought was really cool about it. I mean, we're talking right around the time that the Dreamweaver record came out.
Yeah.
So they have those synthesizers on there that are very much, when people were at that point and fucking around with synthesizers, they all kind of had that same sound. You can hear like some stuff that was on the Styx record from that same year. So it had that going on, but it's an extremely interesting choice of like chords. There's a lot of them in there at times. And this is what I thought was really cool about it. It had like the 60s, like folk singer kind of vibe to it, almost like a Joni Mitchell song or something like that. And that was super cool. And then it kind of flows over into, like the kind of like funky rock of the 70s era. There was a lot of pot smoked, I'm sure, at this session. You can kind of hear that in the arrangement.
Yeah.
And I think you flagged that what you really wanted me to pay attention to was the solo. Yeah. And it's interesting because there's over 5 minutes before that solo comes in.
Yeah.
And it's like pure 70s excess.
Yeah.
And the solo, I love this. I love the solo, but maybe not for the reason that you might think I did. It cracked me up because I thought it was extremely like Nigel Tufnell-esque. Yeah. I mean, when I was listening to that, I pictured you playing that just to like crack me up because it starts off as like these little bits. It's kind of like a really laid back, cool 70s guitar tone, but he does these little flurries and like these repeats. And to me, it just sounded like Nigel Tufnell and like, my solos are my fingerprints. It was like almost, and there's other guitars like this that I really love. They play guitar like they're making fun of guitar players. Yeah. And I like that. And I know that was probably not intentional, right. But that was my vibe. So I actually cracked up when I heard it. And I'm not dissing. I think it was cool, but it was interesting that I got that. I'm going to turn it over to you in a minute because I want to hear what you think about that. But I'd be interested to see if you caught that vibe. But overall, it was really good sounding, and it kind of made me miss records that were made like that, kind of excessive, dense, and like not just your average 3-chord, 4-chord folk rock songs or whatever.
Totally. Yeah. Well, I feel the same way. I mean, it's one of my favorite Heart albums, and the production is pretty insane. So the guitar stuff, it's funny that you said that. Now that you say that, of course, it makes me, it sparks me in that direction. But when I was listening to it, no, I just dug it for so many guitarists in rock were, I think, fancied themselves or tried to push themselves maybe to be more than just rock. And I think Fisher was like that too. Like, and to me, it just evoked him trying to be quasi jazz or funky. You know what I mean? Like, like you're saying, because it was like, he'd do mellow stuff and then little flurries, and it was kind of like this spacey. Now that you say it too, a lot of pot was probably smoked, and he was probably way stoned when he
Oh,
did
I could
the
hear that.
solo. But I just dug it because it's melodic, and I love the guitar tone that they got in that band. Like, and I'm not sure if they recorded with Music Man or stuff like that, but I remember seeing a lot of old footage of them, and they were playing through Music Man amps and stuff like that. But he was, he played Les Pauls and Strats, and I think she did the same. She played Strats and Juniors and stuff like that. But the guitar tone to me is just so cool and a little saturated and mid-rangey and really just cool. Everything I love about that kind of era of guitar tone. But again, and also the thing I was flagging was the little flurries in the song, which he kind of did throughout a lot of Heart songs, like putting in these little things just in the song, all throughout the song, that I think is kind of cool. It was melodic. It's kind of like helping push the song along in weird little ways. And I really dug that about the song too.
That was something I picked up on. I was going to say too. Yeah, it was almost like country in a way.
Yeah.
Like it kind of accents those things, and those are really cool. No, I agree. That was one of the things that I picked up as well.
That's cool. But yeah, now that you say it, yeah, I could picture him playing the fiddle with his feet while he's playing the guitar solo, like Nigel.
Yeah, because it's
did.
not really. It's not. I mean, you mentioned the jazz part, and I can see maybe like in kind of like where it sits inside, but it's more like a finger exercise. Like at least one of the licks is like, it's like something you do when you're warming up, but it's like, and keep in mind, one thing that's interesting to note that this is like still like a year or two, at least a year before Van Halen. And that's when like guitar solos in rock bands changed forever, because everybody thought they had to have like a really hot, fast thing. And this isn't really like that. It's not like super fast. It doesn't sound like he's trying to be really technical. It's just like a speed thing. And you're right, because there were people, I guess, that, in jazz at a time, like Al Di Meola, who like speed was a big thing for. So they were really kind of like, and I think that he got kind of over the top too after Van Halen. So like, no one's faster than me, that kind of like guitar slinger showdown thing. But this is kind of before that. So I'm surprised, because I never noticed that before. And that's one thing that's cool about going back and listen to songs like this, is that, after you've had some experience playing guitar, you can pick out things that when you're a kid that might have sounded difficult or super easy. You find out now it's not, now that you have all this experience to bring into, your listening. So I found this whole experiment kind of fascinating for that reason too.
Yeah, me too. I listen to Magazine. I've been listening to that album more lately, just because I've been going through their catalog, because I really dug them too back in the day. But that's cool. I love your observations on that song. So what's the next song that I chose?
The next song you chose, hang on, I gotta fix my damn mic.
Fix your mic, dude.
The next one was Kid by the Pretenders.
Ah, nice. Yeah, I'm psyched to hear you talk about this song.
So am I supposed to talk about it now? Let me fix my mic.
You are, dude.
Okay, I'll talk about it now. Yeah, my experience with Pretenders is I only grew up and know the radio stuff, like going back to Ohio or whatever it was called, and like Brass in Pocket and Chain Gang and things like that. So this may actually even be the first time I ever heard that song. And it wasn't that I didn't like the Pretenders or didn't think they were very good. It was, I liked them when I heard them. It's just like something, some things, sometimes you just don't explore certain things. And that was one of the things that was left off my kind of radar. Like when I was collecting records, I liked the song. It seemed it was a little murky, but it was certainly interesting. The guitar tones were killer. I mean, they were super, super interesting. Mm-hmm. And, I think it's kind of pointless sometimes to try to analyze like, this is the guitar I'm sure he was playing, because it's like, who really cares? But that happens, the way he played that, and, not just the solo, but just the way his approach to the guitar, that whole thing made me think of a Gretsch. And I don't even know if he played Gretsch. And part of it was because he had kind of that rockabilly, like, that kind of thing going on.
Yeah.
And that was a really interesting, the chords in that were super interesting. I didn't learn any of the solos or anything, but I would kind of like grab a guitar and kind of just see what they're doing, where they're doing things. And that was interesting, the choice of chords that they had going on. There was a lot there. And one of the things that's interesting about your selections, I don't think you probably realize this or not. Are you familiar with how many 70s rock songs had that, like, it's like A to G to F or F to G to A for songs that are like in the key of A?
Oh, I'm
Like
sure a
it's
ton.
Stairway to Heaven,
Yeah.
Don't
Yeah.
Fear the Reaper,
Right.
Ride the Storm Out. I mean, I used to joke around on grab a guitar and just do like a medley of all the songs that use those chords. Two of the songs that you picked had that chords in
Yeah.
it. It's like the 1-7-6 progression or something like that. It's in everywhere, but I just thought it was funny that you had two songs that had that in there.
Yeah.
But and the solo, going to the solo now, I really dug it. I like how he used that open E string to kind of like, kind of almost banjo like do things around. It's really, really interesting choice of notes on, some of it sounds like almost two guitar players. I mean, he's got got you into this mode where you're like, oh, it's going to be this like jangly, let's keep that drone string ringing. And then he goes into something that's kind of just unique. And like, you're like, wow, that's kind of like a left turn. And I like that about it. And I really, really like the guitar tone he had on. I mean, he's like, it's not, bridge pickup. There's a little bit of roundness to it and a little bit like I said, it almost sounded like a Gretsch, but I don't know if that dude played a Gretsch.
Yeah.
I don't know what that guy played for guitars, but it was cool. And I know people love that guitar player, and it's kind of shameful that I don't know that much about him, but I do like that.
That's cool.
Throw my cat off.
Well, I'll chime in. They were on my radar from the first album. I remember hearing Mystery Achievement on the radio and thinking, that's so cool. And I went out and bought the album, the first album. And then that song in particular stuck out just because I just think it's such a cool tune. And yeah, that guitar solo is one of my favorite guitar solos of all time. And he played a ton of different guitars. Like, you see him on the videos. He was playing a Firebird he had a Dan Armstrong, Strats, Les Pauls, you name it, Zemitis. But yeah, cool. I'm glad you dug the solo too, because for the same reasons I like it, you cited. It kind of sounds outside the box a little bit and then kind of rockabilly. But I love the way, he did the pull-offs on the top two strings. And it's, I've learned that solo when I first heard that song, and I just thought it was such a cool solo. And I think that the way it ends too is super cool because it's very rockabilly, right? He does that bend on the E string and then boom,
Yeah.
And then, I just love all the suspended chords throughout that song that make it sound so cool and jangly. And it does have a country flavor, it's got that twangy boom, 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 down, 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 down. That signature part of the song.
I love that. I love stuff like that.
And so cool. But I think you should visit the first two albums, or I think it's the first album in the EP or something. But he's one of my favorite guitar players, man. Yeah.
And we should mention this, I guess, before we start talking about the guitar player, in case anybody doesn't know, that's James Honeyman-Scott.
Yeah.
And Roger Fisher was the Hart guitar player that played that we're talking about, right?
That's awesome, man. Yeah, I'm glad you dug it. What was the third song that I chose?
The third song was that crazy G. Weller.
Oh, dude, I'm curious to hear what you think about that stuff, man.
I fucking loved it. I mean, I just and I started to listen to the podcast where this person I'll go into that in a minute, but let's talk about the music first.
Yeah.
Is one of the things I noticed right off the bat, and this sounds really annoying, like one of those people I'm Mr. Analog, the soul of analog. It's not that at all, but it's just something ingrained in me that I can't help. I love the fucking noise on that. The betweenness. I listen to all the songs on that record.
Awesome,
and it's just a thing. I don't know why it speaks to me so much. It probably reminds me of sitting in my bedroom making 4-track recordings. It's just that it's not really so much hiss. It's just this weird air noise that you get. And that really, to me, added to the experience. And the guitar is just, it's really kind of incredible, what's going on. I can't even analyze what he's doing too much.
Yeah.
On the particular song that you gave me, I could swear and I could be wrong because of the way that he plays. It sounds like a loop. It sounds like he starts with a loop, and then he stops the loop and then he starts playing the guitar. But it's so similar that, he just uses fingers and the lo-fi-ness of the song is you can't tell what guitar he's playing. I mean, it kind of sounds like a classical, but I think that's just because it's so murky. Yeah. It could be, it could be a Martin or something. It could be a really, fancy guitar. It's just the lo-fi-ness of it. It totally added to the character of that music, and it kind of reminded me. My first experience with kind of falling in love with the tape noise or just shitty tape noise was when I was staying with a friend back in the mid 90s, and she had a massive record collection. I'm like, good, I'll use this time to tape a bunch of records. So I had a whole bunch of cassette tapes, and I'm like, I wonder what this is. And I put this record out and I just fell in love with it. And I wasn't familiar with the band either. It was Guided by Voices there, and the record was Vampire on Titus. And that the same thing, those like, and each song would have a little bit of different of like tape noise. And I just kind of fell in love with that. And I really don't know why. I mean, I don't, why does that speak to me? Because I used to hate when I was doing 4-track taping sometimes, and I'd get like dropouts. I'd be like working really hard to get a really good solid take, and there'd be a dropout. And I'd be like, shit.
Yeah.
So, but there is something. And to go back a little bit further, I remember like maybe it was like last year or the year before, you gave me some music that you recorded back in the 80s with your band. And that was like the first thing I noticed. Is like, it's so good to hear like what is obviously music on tape, because it just sounds different. And it's like, I'm not trying to be snooty about it. I like any good sounding music. I mean, there's modern digital stuff that sounds really, really good.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's not that so much, but it is just something that speaks to me about that kind of noise and just like the fucked upness of that medium that, you know, this becomes part of the music.
Yeah.
And that, I'll stop there with all that bullshit. But no, it was really cool. I think it was cool. I don't have enough instrumental music in my life sometimes, I feel like. So that it was cool to kind of listen to that. And now really quickly, I want you to lay out for me here in a minute what the story was with this guy, because I started listening to the podcast and I had something else going on, so I couldn't, but I kind of took it as the podcast from Fretboard Journal, which is where I was reading about the G. Weller guy, is dated like April 1st. So, and I've listened to the part where he's like, it's his answering machine. He's telling people like, stop calling me about how brilliant my music is. I live in my mom's basement.
Yes.
So I kind of took it as like a hoax, like bullshit. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I'd really like to know more about that. And I do want to listen to that podcast, but it was just interesting. I saw the date and I'm like, is this like a hoax? It seems like too weird to be true, but I don't know. It'd be cool if it is.
Yeah.
But well, that's my thoughts.
Yeah. Shout out to Fretboard Journal, because that's where I discovered G. Weller, and I was listening to that podcast. And to make a long story short, the short version is G. Weller was a studio guy in the 70s in LA.
Okay.
A studio guitarist. And he, you know, like so many musicians, wanted to do some of his own stuff, and he tried and it failed. And as you mentioned, you know, fast forward to like not too long ago, this label guy, I don't know if they were affiliated back then or not, but anyway, this label guy got a hold of G. Weller's stuff and released it fairly recently, last couple of years. And one of the guys at Fretboard Journal kind of caught wind of it and was fascinated by the story and tried to go, you know, do detective work about what was going on. And so he contacted the label guy first, and he was this same cranky, you know, suspicious, paranoid dude like G. Weller. And, you know, it took him forever to kind of go, hey, man, I love G. Weller. I love his music. Is he still around? You know, can I get a hold of him? I want to talk to him. And he's similar way. It's like, I don't know. He doesn't want to talk to anybody. But eventually the guy got G. Weller's number, contacted him, and he was the same way. It's like, what do you want to talk to me for? Leave me alone. I'm, you know, yeah. But anyway, he ended up interviewing him and for a little bit. So I think it's legit. I think he's a legit guy that was a studio guy in the 70s. And he learned guitar from his dad, this weird style, this finger style that he played on the stuff I sent you. And so for me, that was my discovery of G. Weller. And for me, it was a revelation. And I'm glad you mentioned the noise. That's what I dig about it too. Other recordings too, like that. To me, I just love it because it becomes another instrument or another character in the story. It's like The Room. You know what I like to hear The Room when I hear recordings. I don't want it to be this sterile, weird thing. And that's another thing I love about the G. Weller stuff is not only the room noise, but if you listen to it with headphones, you can hear him humming to himself as he's playing the freaking tune, and it's so fucking cool. It's insane, dude. I was going, no way. And for me, it's so cool because it's just like you're in the room with this cat, and it's eerie and haunting and cool at the same time. And yeah, I couldn't identify what kind of, it sounds to me like he's playing a small box acoustic, maybe mahogany or something, because it is dark sounding, but just the way he fingerstyle plays this stuff, it's so crazy. And it's
almost like a wind chime or something.
Yes, yes. That's a
at
great
times it's really
analogy.
mechanical, but it's like melodically mechanical.
Yes.
So it's cool. And listen to that. Go back, because I'd like to get your second opinion. Is that a loop in the beginning of that for the song that you recommended, which I don't have it, the title in front of it. We'll have to put that in there.
Yeah.
What is the title of that?
Shit.
Well,
no, we got it. Let me check it out real quick. the title of that song is. This
It's
week.
the name of the record is Pirate Songs of the
Yeah.
Lower Islands, and that one, Life on a Wave.
Yeah, Life on a Wave. Yeah. And that's why I love that song is because he evokes waves kind of with the way he's
Pirates.
strumming and pirates. But I thought it was that I'm glad you said the title because that's what I loved about the song too is the music and the way he's doing this evokes waves and evokes water and I thought it was so cool. Yeah, what else were you going to say? I'm sorry. I thought you were going to say something else about
Was
that.
I going to say
Oh, the
something?
loop. Oh, you talked about the loop. I
Oh
will
yeah,
listen
yeah.
to it again. I don't know if it's a loop, man.
When was this record? When was this
I
recording
think it was
from?
recorded in the 70s.
Okay, so that's
So it was
probably
recorded
not
a long time
unless
ago.
it's a
Yeah.
tape loop.
Yeah, they
But
could have
listen,
done a tape loop. Yeah.
It sounds very loopy. I mean, and there's a pause. It's like
Yeah.
that sounds like a loop. You know, I'm
Yeah.
like, and that's my first thought. That's the first
Yeah.
thing I heard by this dude, and I'm like, oh, a tape loop.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden there's a slight pause, and he starts playing. You know, and but it's the same tone, so
Yeah.
I don't know if it's a tape loop or not.
Yeah.
No, that's you mentioned the room thing really quick.
Uh-huh.
A story. I was working in a wood shop for a while one time, and we had a turntable in there, which was great, and everybody brought in their records to play, and someone brought in it was like a Cat Power record, and I don't remember what the record was,
love it.
and they're playing, and I'm like, this sounds like this portion of the song sounds like Big Star, and I go over and look, and it's the same studio, and I could kind of
that's
hear
cool.
that studio was, I think it was piano or something. I'm like, this sounds like that, and I don't know if it was just coincidence or what, but it did. It made me think that this is that same studio. So I think there's something to that. I think rooms definitely. I mean, I know there's something to that, but I don't know
Yeah.
to that certain extent. But I did a lot of Ford tracking in the 90s at 8th and Spring in Seattle, and I always had the freeway in my songs.
I love that.
Because
I
the
love
freeway
that
went really close to my apartment, so you could always hear I-5. But yeah, go back to what you were saying. Sorry.
No, I love that. Yeah, and I think the way he plays it just evokes like a loop or kind of this hypnotic sensibility, which it's just enchanting. Everybody that's listening to this needs to check out G. Weller because it's really some of the coolest guitar music I've heard. And I was just, yeah, listen to it all, Chris, again, and listen to it with headphones and see if you can hear him humming in some of these songs to himself.
All right.
It's so
I will do that.
crazy. But yeah, I just fell in love with it. And I listened to it like once I discovered it, I just listened to it kind of every day for like a month or something. It was crazy, but I really dig it. I'm so glad you liked it too, man, because it's weird. It feels like it just dropped out of the sky to me. But that's kind of another thing I love about it is it's just so crazy. And you know, I've listened to a lot of acoustic guitar instrumental music, and there's so much of it that's really great. But this stuff to me just really caught me because it is haunting and hypnotic and kind of crazy.
Some of that Brian Eno stuff it reminded me of too, like the
Yeah.
flipping Brian Eno, which I have here. That's stuff that I like to listen to, but
Yeah.
it's more like an acoustic. That definitely that acoustic, like there's a woody vibe to it,
Yes,
definitely
yes.
to all of it, which is cool.
I love it.
So I liked everything. I mean,
That's awesome, dude.
I mean, like when I was picking songs, I could just like close my eyes and grab 3 records out of my collection because I mean, even bands that I don't really like, there's things about, you know, the guitar or something that's going on that I
Yeah.
love. And it's something that, you know, I probably am influenced by and that I steal from all the time. So that's what's cool about doing shit like this, I think.
I love it. Well, that's a good segue. I'm psyched because I'm psyched to talk about yours. So I'm going to dig into yours.
All right. You have
ready?
them there?
I've got them on hand. So the first one you chose was the album is Radio City by Big Star.
Oh, speaking of Big Star. Wow.
Yeah. And Alex Chilton playing guitar. And the song is September Girls, which I love. First of all, I love Big Star. Second of all, I've always dug their guitar sounds. To me, the thing I'm drawn to about any sound is I don't like sterile. And I've hammered that into our conversations as we talk, but I like sounds that seem a little untamed, that seem dynamic and kind of living and breathing. And so the guitar sounds that they got on their recordings totally fit the bill for me. Like they're jangly, crazy. Like I'm sure if you isolate those guitars, and we talked about that before, they probably sound like shit. But in the context of the mix of these songs, it just sounds so cool. So even the strumming guitars, I love. I don't know what they are. It sounds single coil to me. I know I've seen pictures of them, like Chris Bell playing that cool 70s Strat, and Chilton played a bunch of different guitars, but so the song is so cool. I love the song. It's melodic. It's beautiful. The guitar parts are so cool. The solo is cool because, again, it fits with what I love, melodic, kind of jangly, and it's just kind of moves the song in that melodic way, that I always love. And so, yeah, I totally dug this song, and I dug the solo that you chose. What things came to your mind when you chose this song to highlight?
Well, that was a big one for me because I didn't even discover Big Star until like, it would have been like probably 86 or something. I actually happened to live with a person who was a rock writer, and he introduced me to a lot of cool music that I didn't know about. And that was one of them. But, that was after I'd gone through my Aerosmith, AC/DC and all this, and I was like trying to learn all these complicated rock and roll licks. And, I found this band, and particularly that song that was like the first one that just grabbed me. And I'm like, what a brilliant solo. It's so simple. And it's like Mike Campbell can do this too. It's like you can take one of the most brilliant pop songs. I mean, it's just like this infectious, brilliant pop song, and that gets stuck in your head. But at the same time, you walk away and you're humming the guitar solo. You know what I mean? Yeah. It's like it doesn't overpower anything. It's not like it's so simple. And I'm assuming this was Radio City, so Chris Bell was no longer around. So this was just. Okay. I'm assuming it was Alice Chilton, and it's definitely a Strat. I can definitely hear it's a Strat. But it's just like simple. And a lot of times if I find myself trying to come up with a guitar part and I'm like taking apart the chords and trying to come up with something against the chords or over the chords and overthinking things, I'm like, just think back to the most simple thing. I mean, he's not quoting the melody of the song or anything. He's just like, it's just like this really simple, beautiful thing. And it's perfect too, because it's right after the bridge, and the bridge it's like this little like soul kind of breakdown bridge. And so they wind you up there, and that's like the release is this beautiful melodic part, and it's just like it just nails it. Like I said, it gets stuck in my mind for days after I hear that song. And another thing I love about that song, my favorite, drummers are going to hate me for this, but my favorite fucking drum fills of all time are after the solo in that one, and like Cheap Trick Surrender. It's just a snare drum. You know what I mean? It's just like into the back into the song. It's like just such a beautiful wind up. So I think all of the ones that I picked have something in common, in that they're all very simple. I mean, they're very not super simple, but to the point of where there's no, technically they're not anything spectacular, but they just work so well with what they're doing.
I'm glad you mentioned the drums, because that's a part of Big Star overall that I love. Is that guy was so tasty. Like, and it again on the drums, you don't need to do a bunch of crazy fills. You just need to do something that's really cool and bring somebody from one part of the song to the next. And I love the drumming in that song.
Oh, another thing about that song is I actually sold a vintage Fender Bassman head when I was working at Emerald City Guitars to someone because of that song.
Oh, that's so
it's like
cool.
They're like, there's this sound that I want to get on guitar, kind of like September Girls. I'm like, that's, to me, I don't know what it is, but I can probably get close to that song with a Fender Stratocaster through a basement amp, and just crank it.
That's awesome.
No drive or anything like that. Just crank it. And and then, going back to the song, it's like, is that quarter? I mean, it's just like straight quarter note strumming. It's like very like mechanical.
Straight ahead. Yeah.
It's perfect. It's that is like the classic, like throaty, like thick Strat tone. You can just hear that. You just know it was cranked when, in the room that they were doing with. But that song actually sold one Fender Bassman silver bass amp.
Well, I love it. That was a great choice, dude. So the next song is by the band Faces. Album is Long Player, and the song is Maybe I'm Amazed. And this is my favorite version of that song, is the way they did it, because it's just a rock band doing that song. There's no there's a piano, but it's not like, they don't do it like McCartney does it, and it's so cool. Like Ronnie Lane starts the verse, and then Rod Stewart comes in. It's
like
just
Journey on
totally.
Feeling that way.
Totally. And that part of it, I love that song and the way they do this song, and the guitar parts. Again, I love the way Ron Wood does the little guitar part that McCartney would do falsetto, right? Go after the verses. And it's so cool. And it's so effective on guitar. It's so cool. And I remember seeing a video of them doing this, and he's playing through a Champ, I think. Ron Wood. I don't know if he recorded it, but this is another live version. I don't know if it's that live version, but this is a live version. And his guitar sound, again, is so quintessentially of that time, but so cool. It's mid-rangey. It sounds great. If he's playing through a champ, like that's the best sound. And it's a Silverface champ too, by the way. It sounds amazing. It sounds big and cool and like the quintessential guitar sound you want to hear. And I love it. And then so the solo he does is so cool because he starts out kind of doing a melodic kind of emulating the melody of the song, and then he ends it with more of a rock kind of pentatonic lead that I love. And it's so rock and roll to me, right? It's like Ronnie Wood. I could just see him like playing this solo. But again, it serves the song, it fits the song, and kind of the last part of the solo to me is him kind of just, it's rock and roll kind of. I don't know. So I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this tune.
Oh yeah, I mean I love the McCartney version. I mean that song is an example of McCartney's like brilliance with melody and what he does with melody and parts and things like that. So I love that. But I just thought that song was so well suited to the Faces and the way they deliver things. Like the chromatic climbs, they're just totally Faces. I mean, everybody called them like really sloppy, and they are in a way, but they're like in the pocket. So it's like you can't be. I mean, there's slop. What was the Zeppelin thing? Tight but loose or whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
They're great for that, like in the pocket, but kind of like it might fall apart at any moment.
Yes.
And I'm a huge Ronnie Lane fan. I love everything that guy ever did. And that kind of trade off of, vocals, him starting it out and then, Rod Stewart coming in was cool. But I guess now that I'm thinking about that, my next selection is going to be probably for the same reason is, it just shows you how much you can do with so little. You know what I mean? It's like he's playing where we all play, the major pentatonic or just, that little box that we all kind of play in. It's just like, just pull something outside of that every once in a while and put it in there, and it just becomes this really lyrical playing, and it's not hard to do at all, but it's so right for the song, and it's just beautiful. And I've always loved the Faces guitar tone, and if somebody or Ronnie's tone during that time, and I would always think like that to me sounds like a Junior, and so that it sounds totally like a Junior, and it kind of does, but it shows how pointless doing that is, because it was either a Zemaitis, or maybe a Dan Armstrong or a Strat. That's what he played back then.
Yeah,
and no matter which one of those was playing, it sounded like him. It was that thick sound, so that was a huge part of it. But I just love that song. I love the whole way they deliver that song, and it's just like they're really very respectful. You can tell that they love that song, and that's why we're doing it. This is a great song. We love it. We're going to do it. And they did it justice, and it was like, and they gave it that Faces twist. And, I could have done the McCartney version too, because I like that, but there's just something about it that shows what a good marriage of, a band and another song can do for me.
Yeah. And I love that whole thing too, the loose, whatever, sloppy, because the intro of the song just sounds like they're kind of like stumbling on stage and stumbling into this song. And I love that. It's like, because I can just see Ronnie Lane, just like so relaxed and so laid back, just plunking on that big bass he played. And that's one of the things I love about the Faces and other bands like the Faces that are in the pocket, but and let's move on to the third song.
Third and final.
I don't think I'd ever listened to this song, man, but this is such a cool tune. And I'm glad you chose it because, again, I love discovering new things. And I've listened to things. New old things, yeah. But the third one was Mott the Hoople, the band, album Mott. And the song is Hymn for the Dudes. And this song is so cool. It's kind of, again, I think Mott the Hoople to me had this kind of rock and roll majestic sensibility to them, kind of grandiose. Anyway, to me, that's the way I think of Mott the Hoople, kind of this big, kind of grandiose thing. But this song especially kind of embodied that for me. Especially, I love the way the song is going, and then it just kind of, it feels like it's coming to an end, like the song is ending, and it almost, there might be a pause actually. A small pause between like the last lyric, like Ian Hunter sings, I forget what he says, but it's like one little phrase or one word. And then boom, the solo comes in huge and loud. And I don't know what it is. Again, too, it sounds like a junior, but it's thick, and you can hear the room in this recording, and it's just this big, majestic solo. But again, simple, but I love the dynamics that they played with in this song, and how the solo comes in and just kind of takes over, and it's majestic, and then it goes into the song. But yeah, so for me, again, the guitar parts all sound so cool and so of the time, but the guitar solo really, I just love the dynamic aspect of how this came in.
Yeah.
What about you?
No, it's good stuff. I mean, Mott the Hoople was the band as a kid that was like my first. I'm way into a band, you know what I mean? Like a lot of people, it was Kiss, and I got into Kiss later, but that was the time that they were like, my band, this is the band I'm obsessed with. And, the first band like that for me. So, and then I had a period of where I didn't listen to them for years. And then after having all this experience playing music and learning the guitar and then coming back and listening to it, it's just like, wow. I mean, how much of that is in my DNA that I realize now after that. And what I liked about that particular song is that's like the drama in those songs from that era, and it's like goth for Midwestern boys. You know what I mean? It's like it's just really kind of dark and like moody, and I love that about it. It's beautiful. I mean, that song is just like, so like you said, majestic is a good word for it. It's just super moody and majestic, and then we get to the part where it drops almost into like spoken word. I think it might actually be spoken word. Yeah. And, it's like, you can't get more drama, and like, what a great setup for him. I mean, he had a great setup for that guitar solo. So it's like, man. It just stops and hands it to him. What are you going to do with it? And again, this is very much like the Ronnie Wood stuff. It's like, look what you can do with just, we all like the scales he's climbing up. We're like, we all use those all the time. Yeah. But what makes that so beautiful and so brilliant is his vibrato and his choice of where he's like, okay, we're in the, this is very, very, very major, but I'm just going to pull like a, I'm just going to do a bend here. That's, that's minor, here and there. And it just becomes this like living, breathing thing. And there's very much in his playing that British blues thing. Like you can hear it like in Clapton and everybody. It's like the British people's take on the blues. And I like what he did with it. It's his version is a little bit more simplified, and it's like very, very vibe and, vibrato based. Mm-hmm. And you can hear, when you listen to the song, you will hear Bad Company. You can hear when he went into Bad Company, you can hear his vibrato is almost sounds, it's kind of a little lazy. It almost sounds like a little pitchy, but it's not. It's beautiful. And it's him, and you could pick him out in the lineup. It's just Mick Ralph's, his style, like the way he bends a string. It's like, he would, and so much of that is like in my DNA, and like as I developed as a guitar player, whether I realized it or not, I took things from him. And the Junior is definitely one of them. That I'm pretty sure that's a Junior that he was playing there, and that big thick.
Oh man!
Sound. There's a great. I think it's the Mott the Hoople live record, the Blue, and he was no longer with them. It was that Ariel Bender guide. But the record starts out with their big song all the way from Memphis. But it's like you hear the piano winding things up, and that first A chord you hear on that record is like this big A, like, and it's like that is a Junior. Like what it does, it's just like pure rock and roll. So he was way. Mick Rouse was way into the Juniors and melody makers and things like that. Cool. And they would tour the United States, and they would just like stop in every city and pick up like these Juniors, and for like some to $75.
Oh my God.
It was like Ian Hunter wrote a book. It's really cool if you can find it. It's called Diary of a Rock and Roll Star. And the stories are in there where they're like, people would show up to their hotel rooms with just like a bunch of like Juniors and melody makers, and they'd buy them for like $75. Jesus. And they turned, I think it was them that turned, what's his name? The mountain guy. Or
Leslie West?
Maybe it was the other way. I think it was the other way around.
Yeah.
I think Leslie West turned them on to it.
Got it.
So no, that's a big reason why I played Juniors, or I played Junior for a long time, or why I got a Junior was that band. So
that's so cool.
Yeah. But it's just the drama of that song, and just like the brilliance of like, this isn't, there's no technical genius at work here. It's just melodic genius and feel genius. And that's like, and you can do a lot with that,
Totally.
So that was I mean, I guess the last two that I chose were very much for the same kind of reasons, but that's like always been a big thing of mine, like melody and simple, direct stuff. So
Yeah. Yeah, and I agree. And I think I think we're both drawn to that kind of stuff. And, as guitar players, we most of us go on those journeys about like, what does soloing mean, or what does it mean to be a good guitar player or anything else? But yeah, I always come back to it. Just do something simple and beautiful, and that will usually 9 times out of 10, that will win the day. It's just like, you can't go wrong with that. You can't go wrong with simplicity and trying to listen to the song, listen to the chords, and just play something, meaningful over that passage, and yeah, all of those songs actually that you chose are that way, I think. Yeah.
Well, there you have it. 3 for 3. That was fun.
3 for 3, baby. Well, we're going to do it again too, man. I loved it. As always, thanks for listening, everybody. And also, I'm going to say it again. I'm going to say it until you're tired of it. We're a part of the Ruinous Media Network. We're so proud to be a part of that cool network of other podcasts and music and culture. And we're psyched to see where that takes us, and listen to us on Apple and Spotify and all the other cool podcast thingos, and go to Ruinous Media and check us out, and check out the other podcasts as well. There's a lot of other great podcasts that I think you'd dig. What do you got to say, Chris?
Goodbye.